I want to try and unwrap it, and I want to try and look at things and explain how the system itself works. I mean, let's take some examples that we're going to talk about today. I mean, we can talk specific related to if you're pulled over, what obligations and responsibilities do you have? If you have a party at your house and there are kids there and kids are drinking, what role do you need to play as an adult, and what potential legal implications do you have? To the extent that you've got someone that was pulled over and they want advice whether they should blow into a breathalyzer. Should they? What if you filed a lawsuit? What does that actually mean if you file a lawsuit? How do I work with my lawyer through that process? Those are some things we're going to unwrap today that are legal related issues that we're going to put it in as plain English as we can with no legalese to show how the system itself works and how to answer those questions. This is Hollis Wright Managing Partner Josh Wright, and welcome to the Verdicts In Podcast Season 4. Here, our experienced attorneys break down the hottest legal stories making headlines and connect them to real cases from our firm's files. Each episode dives into current events, landmark verdicts, and trending legal debates, giving you practical insight into how law really works for you and in the real world. With candid conversations, expert commentary, and behind-the-scenes stories from active and past cases, The Verdicts In gives listeners a front-row seat to the intersection of news and personal injury law. Plus, in every episode, you'll pick up valuable legal advice straight from the front lines that can help you in your everyday life. Subscribe to The Verdicts In podcast wherever you get your podcasts and get great legal insight without the legalese. The Verdicts In podcast starts now.
Welcome in to the Verdicts In podcast. I'm Carter Clay here with my distinguished partner, Josh Wright. Very interesting topic here today. Legal advice for non-lawyers, what you always wanted to know. Sort of give the people what they want.
Well, you and I both know on a Saturday night at 11 o'clock, these calls come in. And a lot of times they come in and you've got to step away from whatever you're doing to try and figure out, can you provide at least some general advice to get someone through the weekend to be able to get them in a position when they're able to make good decisions the next week?
Well, that's exactly right. Of course, we all know that we get these questions during our television show and throughout the week, and these are some of the more popular questions that we get. But I wanted to say that because otherwise I might be questioning who you're sort of hanging out with, Josh.
Well, that's fair.
Given the questions that we're going to cover here today.
Well, I'm hanging out with you, so that's okay. That's allowed.
That's true.
But no, look, the reason I really wanted to do this show really relates to there are a series of questions that you can get as a lawyer that people want to know the answer to that just may not always come off as being in English and it's got legalese attached to it. I want to try and unwrap it, and I want to try and look at things and explain how the system itself works. I mean, let's take some examples that we're going to talk about today. I mean, we can talk specific related to if you're pulled over, what obligations and responsibilities do you have? If you have a party at your house and there are kids there and kids are drinking, what role do you need to play as an adult, and what potential legal implications do you have? To the extent that you've got someone that was pulled over and they want advice whether they should blow into a breathalyzer. Should they? What if you filed a lawsuit? What does that actually mean if you file a lawsuit? How do I work with my lawyer through that process? Those are some things we're going to unwrap today that are legal related issues that we're going to put it in as plain English as we can with no legalese to show how the system itself works and how to answer those questions.
Yeah, we have a lot of ground to cover, but before we jump into that, as I was going through the materials, I was thinking about how natural this conversation is for me and you. And one of the reasons that it's natural is we talk about a lot of these topics that we're going to cover here in our office on a daily basis. And I know you think this is important, as do I, in terms of lawyer collaboration in an office setting. I mean, I come to your office, we go to John Spade's office, Michael Eldridge, Craig Shirley, we include everybody. We'll go in there and ask them questions related to the cases that we have on our case list, primarily the Dram Shop. In serving of alcohol. We don't really handle a lot of criminal cases, but just talk briefly about the collaboration and the importance of it.
Well, it's super important in making sure that you are providing sound legal advice to your clients, and in addition, that you're making the right decisions. I can learn something from a first-year lawyer, just like a first-year lawyer can learn something from someone that's been doing this 27 years. And that's part of the collaborative nature of a law firm. And I call it a collegial collaborative effort because we like to razz each other. There's a lot of text chains going on over the weekends, especially related to athletic events. But it's nice to have other people to ask questions to make sure I'm making the right decision, because I may have handled a case, Carter, 15 times where I think I know the right way, but a young lawyer at the firm that's a 4 or 5 year lawyer may have seen a different angle that I never thought about that makes me be bigger, better, stronger, and faster using the collaborative process. So to me, I think that's a critical component. It's why we have the law firm we do. It's why we rely on our 10 lawyers to be able to make sound legal decisions for people.
And it's one of the reasons why we really don't like remote work. I heard a funny story the other day from J.P. Diamond at the J.P. Morgan, Jamie Diamond at J.P. Morgan Chase. He told all of his staff that they were more than free to work remotely on Saturday and Sunday, just like he does. So I thought that was pretty funny. But anyway, let's dive into this. So Dram Shop Law is very interesting. If you're not a lawyer, nobody talks about a dram shop.
Yeah, that's right.
And we could historically look at how that name came about. But what are we talking about when we talk about the dram shop laws, and how do they apply to everyday people?
So let me unwrap this as simple as possible. So there are laws out there in Alabama called dram shop laws. And in short, they prescribe the actions that a bar, a convenience store, a restaurant, even a country club can take in how they serve alcohol to third parties. And they are supposed to be the experts. They have trained servers. They have trained purchasers. They have to have certain types of alcohol that is consistent among one bar to the next. And they can only serve certain things to you, and they got to do it the correct way. So bars and convenience stores and restaurants primarily are what we deal with in the dram shop world. They're held to a certain standard. Now, you may ask, well, hey, what if I'm having a party at my house? Am I held to the same standard as the bar and the restaurant, the convenience store? And the answer is a qualified no. It is qualified a little bit. The answer is no, to the extent that you're having a party at your house, for example, and you are providing alcohol at the house. You are not a premises owner like a bar or restaurant, and you don't have the same rules that apply to you, because in Alabama we have something called the social host obligations. And a social host in Alabama is not responsible for the conduct of someone that overdrank at their house and leaves and has an accident. And that may sound a little counterintuitive, where you're like, well, hey, everyone has a responsibility to make sure someone got that person an Uber, someone made sure they got home safely. But the law does not prescribe that. The law does not require someone with an adult at their house who makes a bad decision, overdrinks, and has an accident. It does not allow a suit to be filed against the individual social host. However, as you know, and I said it was qualified, there are exceptions to all parts of the law. One of the really important sections here is if it is a minor that is consuming alcohol. And the law does apply to a social host, and it does require the social host not to put the minor in peril and in a bad situation where they could go out and cause an injury to themselves or to someone else. So the qualification is if you are providing alcohol or you turn a blind eye to alcohol consumption at your house with minors, and then they go out and injure some third party or they injure themselves, you could be responsible.
So there's a little bit of flexibility there in terms of serving and providing alcohol in the house, but there are qualifications there, especially when it deals with minors. We get this question a lot from parents, and of course we're right in the midst of the holiday season as we are right now. So the timing of this topic is very relevant. But I have a parent ask me, they said, well, what should I do in this situation? I've got college kids that are home, but they're not 21. I've got teenagers in high school. And I asked them, I said, well, what do you value more? Do you value your property more, or do you want to avoid liability more? And they said, well, why do you ask me that question? I said, well, it's certainly reasonable for you to leave the house and leave teenagers there. And so to avoid liability, just leave the house and let them be there. And you have no knowledge whatsoever of what's going on. And they say, well, I don't want to do that. They'll tear my house up. And I said, well, okay, then stay at the house.
That's right.
And I said, well, if you stay at the house, then you may have some knowledge about what's going on there. So it's a difficult situation for parents.
Well, it is, and I get all the time when there's a homecoming party coming or a prom party and there are going to be, 80 kids there. Do these releases work? If I have a release that the parents sign, does that work? I've actually written some releases for other parents to try and help them and ease their conscience. The pro trick, if you will, is never provide or buy alcohol for someone under 21 that is consuming alcohol. Don't ever do that. That's the pro trick. That probably insulates you for the most part. There are some blind eye rules where if you turn a blind eye, knowing, even if you didn't provide the alcohol, knowing that they're consuming alcohol at your house, could you still be responsible? The law is a little murky in this area, but the pro trick is don't ever provide or purchase alcohol for minors, period.
Yeah. I want to get one more question in before we go to a break. There are many out there that talk about personal responsibility, and this really applies more to people consuming alcohol at a bar or restaurant. Somebody may say, well, I don't like the fact that you can also hold a restaurant or bar responsible for over-serving somebody. But you touched upon this earlier, but talk a little bit more about the process that a bar or restaurant has to go through to get a license to even be able to serve alcohol and how they're making a profit off of that, and therefore there's nothing unreasonable with holding them responsible.
Oh, that's exactly right, and that's what the laws are based on. The laws are based on the fact that in order to receive a premises license to serve alcohol on your premises, whether you're a bar, a restaurant, convenience store, etc., you have to go through a process with the Alabama Beverage Control Board. You have to register with them. You have to be insured through them. Not necessarily you can have third-party insurance, but you have to prove proof of insurance. And you have to ensure that the people that are providing alcohol in Alabama are doing it safely and are properly trained. There are rules and obligations in the regulations of the ABC that an individual entity that is serving alcohol have to comply with. And so here's the deal. If you're going to jump through those hoops as a bar, a restaurant, and a convenience store, you're going to get licensed, you're going to have insurance, you're going to train your employees, and there are laws in Alabama that require you to do all of those things. You're doing it because you're going to make a profit. Because people don't just necessarily want to go to a restaurant and eat food. They want to go to a restaurant and eat food and have the ability to consume alcohol, or they want to go to a bar, or they want to purchase alcohol from a convenience store. Those people are trained and they're profiting off of the training of their own employees to make sure that the employees are doing it the right way. And if they're not doing it the right way, there are law firms out there like us that will hold them accountable.
Yeah, that's great information. Let's step aside for a second. We're going to transition and talk about rights and responsibilities when interacting with a police officer.
Let's do it, because that's what that gets people in trouble a lot.
That's right. And just as a reminder for anybody who wants to get in touch with Hollis Wright Law Firm, you can find us on the internet at hollis-wright.com. You can call 844-LAW-TALK, or our local number is 205-324-3600. Stay tuned. More coming up in just a minute.
For over 20 years, Hollis Wright has been turning setbacks into comebacks. Make no mistake, who you hire after an accident will define your comeback. Pick a trusted firm that knows how to win. Let Hollis Wright tell your comeback story.
The attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you.
When we started the show in 2011, my goal was to do what our firm does best. Help people answer questions related to real-world legal issues they have in their lives in a way that's not intimidating to talk with a lawyer. If the issue is important to you, it's equally important to us, and we're ready to talk with you at no cost.
Yeah, oftentimes people are confronting various legal issues in their lives that really run the gamut of a lot of different legal practice areas, such as bankruptcy, criminal law, civil law, such as personal injury, divorces, domestic relations. And to be able to have a show once a week that covers those practice areas and answers people's questions in those areas, that's really the main objective of the show.
We use the resources of the many lawyers at our law firm to create a plan that has a lasting impact for each person that calls or texts. And we also give back to the community at the same time. We are here to serve you, the viewer, each week on The Attorneys.
Welcome back in here with Josh Wright, covering a lot of ground on what you always wanted to know for the non-lawyers. So let's dive right back into it, Josh. We covered serving of alcohol, the Dram Shop laws in Alabama. Let's talk about interacting with police officers. We get a lot of calls about this throughout the week and during the show, and we all, of course, because we don't handle criminal cases, but we've got a laundry list of lawyers out there that do handle these cases, and of course we'll refer individuals over to those lawyers if need be. But what are the rules if you get pulled over by a police officer in general? Because that generally is the topic that we get questioned about the most.
Well, and not only that, a lot of the times we're seeing these issues when someone has been arrested at a simple traffic stop that was completely unnecessary. They should have never gone through the process, but they could have resolved the issue on their own without even asking for legal help. And, you know, a lot of this comes down, Carter, to simply being patient and respectful when you are stopped by a police officer. And I think sometimes when people are not calm and they're not respectful, tempers can flare and things turn in a negative way for a traffic stop that had no reason to ever end up with someone in the back of a police car or arrested.
Yeah, compliance is critically important. And one of the things that I see a lot is people think that they know their rights and they think that they know the law, but they really don't, and they go too far with it. And a great example of this are people that get pulled over and they just say, well, this officer shouldn't have pulled me over. I'm not going to comply at all, or I'm not going to get out of my vehicle. And it's not quite that simple. There are certain things and certain questions that you have to answer and that you have to do under the law. Talk a little bit about basic things that people have to do and provide to the police officer if they're pulled over.
And I think this goes into this category of the marketplace, and people have been wrongly equipped with improper information about what you can and cannot do to traffic stop. I see these videos all the time that are on social media where they say, I want to talk to your manager. You have to explain to me what I'm being pulled over for. You don't necessarily get any of those rights. When you are pulled over, I have a rule. My rule is when I'm pulled over, my hands are both on the steering wheel, the radio is completely off, and my window is down, and I have my license in one hand with both hands on the steering wheel because I want to disarm the officer when he walks up. And I want him to know, okay, this is a guy that's going to be compliant. I see both of his hands. He's got his ID. He's ready to communicate with me. And so I think that goes a long way. But here's what you do have to provide, information you have to provide. You've got to provide your name. If asked, you have to provide your address. You have to provide your license. You have to provide proof of registration and proof of insurance. And a lot of people will ask this question, well, I don't have my insurance card. I didn't print it out, but I got an email saying I had it. Well, guess what? It's on your phone, right? Download it on your phone. You have to provide proof of insurance, not an actual insurance card. Now, you've got to have your license, though. And here's another question. People think, well, they asked me to get out of the car. I'm not getting out of the car. I have rights not to get out of the car. Guess what? You don't have rights not to get out of the car. If an officer has a lawful request to ask you to get out of the vehicle, to talk with him, and to evaluate you, if he wants to evaluate you, you have a responsibility to get out of the car. That's where things get sideways a lot.
Yeah, because the police officer gets concerned about, well, why aren't they getting out of the car? Do they have a weapon? Do they have something in the car? But let's transition. So you get out of the car, right? And this is sort of the tipping point from where you go have to provide basic information that you just described to self-incrimination, protecting your rights from self-incrimination. So if you get out of the car, maybe the police officer is suspicious that you're driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs, and they want you to take a field sobriety test, or they want you to take a breathalyzer test. Do you have to comply with those requests?
You do not. There are some, that's a qualified answer, because there are some potential problems if you don't comply, but ultimately you do not have a responsibility to self-incriminate yourself. You do not have a responsibility to do a field sobriety test if you don't desire to, and you do not have a responsibility to allow them to search your vehicle. You have the right to say, no, thank you, I would not like you to search my vehicle, or I have chosen for you not to be able to search my vehicle. They have to go get a warrant and some other things. Now, there are exceptions to every law, every rule. Part of it is if they've got immediate probable cause. If you open the window and marijuana comes out, you open the window and you're completely drunk and it's clear and there's open alcohol, there may be exceptions to it. But for the most part, you do not have to incriminate yourself. You can remain quiet and you can just answer the questions about your name, license information, registration information, insurance, and be done with it.
Yeah, now before we take our final break of the evening, talk a little bit about the consequences of refusing to take that breathalyzer or that field sobriety test. What can happen to you?
Yeah, so when we come back, let's talk a little bit about whether or not you should actually blow in a breathalyzer and what is allowed and what is not as far as your rights. But I will tell you this before we go to break, and we'll tease it to the other side. If you don't blow and you elect not to, you are going to guarantee you lose your license for a period of time for a first offense and then for a second offense. But when we come back, let's talk about that and unwrap that.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll go to our final break right here. And just as another reminder, follow Hollis Wright. We're pretty much on every social media platform that you can imagine. You can find us there. There's a wealth of information there, as well as our website. If you have any questions, give us a call as well. We'll be right back.
At Hollis Wright, we don't cut corners when helping our clients. Financial resources matter, and we know it. If it's a car accident, a work injury, or a defective product, we have the resources to help. Let Hollis Wright tell your comeback story. We don't love doing TV commercials, but we advertise so you know there are, in fact, differences in law firms and attorneys. If you're looking for a firm that is up for your fight and never quits, you found us. Let Hollis Wright tell your comeback story.
Welcome back in. Final segment of the Verdicts In podcast episode with my partner, Josh Wright. You teased us to this final segment. Breathalyzer, field sobriety test. Should somebody participate in that? What if they don't? What are the consequences if they do? What does this decision-making process look like?
So let's give some context to this because it's a question that I get a lot, which is, hey, should I have blown into the breathalyzer, or do I, if I'm pulled over, blow into the breathalyzer? Let's make sure people understand. There are two potential circumstances where you would have to blow into something if you were pulled over and you're being evaluated for a DUI or a drug under the influence arrest. You have a field sobriety test that can be used to try and assess whether or not you're capable of doing certain tasks. Then there's also a small intoxicated machine that they have, which is called a PBT, which can be used at the scene that is only a positive or a negative. It's not necessarily calibrated and it's not super accurate, but it gives the officer some indication if his decision-making on the field sobriety test is appropriate and whether it's important to arrest you now to take you down to the station. That is not admissible in most courts. You do not have an obligation to blow into that at the scene. You also don't have an obligation to do a field sobriety test if you don't desire to. But here's the rule that I always provide to people. Hey, if you think you're good, you're only going to hurt yourself if you try and refuse those things. If you think you're good and you've had one drink and you feel comfortable and you think you're totally capable of operating a vehicle and you're not impaired, comply with the officer, right? But now let's talk about what happens if you...
Let me interrupt real quick.
Please.
Josh, we all know that everybody thinks they're good.
That's right. Well,
isn't that the problem?
Yeah, some people are capable of recognizing when they're not good.
Okay.
Some people are not, meaning alcohol and drugs affect different people different ways, obviously. When you get to the police station, you are going to be given an opportunity to blow into what's called the intoxicated machine, which is a calibrated, certified machine that is used throughout the state. And when I say it's calibrated and certified, it is going to be admissible in court if you blow into that machine. Now, you have to make some judgment calls. If you refuse to blow into the intoxicated machine, you are going to lose your license guaranteed, even if you were found not guilty of DUI, 90 days on a first offense. Second offense, you're going to lose it for a year. okay? And there are no exceptions. You don't get to say, well, I still have to drive to work, or I've got to get my kids to school, or I've got to pick up my grandmother. It doesn't work that way. You lose your license if you refuse to blow. So the answer really is this. You have to assess in context, in the circumstance, do I feel like I'm capable of blowing into this machine and being below the legal limit? And the legal limit has come down over the years. It's now 0.08, and it may come down even more at some point in the near future. If you blow below the legal limit, you're helping yourself because you're showing that you are within the legal limit and you didn't violate the law. If you blow over, it's going to be evidence used against you. So you got to make your own judgment call. There's no one-size-fits-all here. It all comes down to, are you capable of making a good decision at that time, and did you consume too much alcohol? And I'm going to leave the people with this, and this is so important. With all the ride share out there, not only just Uber, not only Lyft, and some of the taxis and friends, there's no reason someone should be drinking and driving at this stage. It's unnecessary.
You know Ron White, the comedian?
Yeah.
He's always got that liquor drink up there on the podium next to him while he does this bit about how he knew he had the right to remain silent, but he just didn't have the ability to
Couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it.
So. That's right.
But
right.
It's important. You do have these rights, but you also have these responsibilities, and you've got to understand and know the consequences of these actions. I'll tell you what, if this personal injury practice doesn't work out for you and me, you've got a bright future in the criminal law world.
I think we can do it.
You
definitely I could have been a criminal lawyer.
You definitely know this area of the law with respect to the breathalyzers and field sobriety testing for sure. All right, let's talk about our practice though, and the topic that we get a lot from our own clients, but are people that are out there calling in during the show, and it relates to why is my case taking so long to get through the civil court system? And this is something that people just don't understand, and a lot of times they don't understand what it is that we have to do to get their case prepared to go to trial if we have to try their case. So let's talk about why cases take so long, what we're doing to work their cases up, and why the court system is the way it is.
Yeah, so judges have good intentions, and they have every intention to help you litigate your cases as fast as you possibly can. They also have gigantic dockets oftentimes. And lawyers by nature and the system by nature just simply takes time. It's not the judge's fault. It's not the lawyer's fault. It's the amount and volume of information that has to be put together in order to make sure a case is prepared for trial. A lot of times we get this question, I get it a lot, which is, all right, hold on. You're telling me the insurance carrier's not offering the right money for my case, and we need to file my case. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean that I've got to file my case? And once I file my case, does my fee change with you? What role do I play? What impact is that going to have on my case? Well, let me just whip you kind of through it quickly. Number one, if you file your case, you're going to get a different insurance adjuster, almost guaranteed, as soon as you file your case. So if you were struggling with one insurance adjuster, you may be able to have another insurance adjuster that you can talk some sense in to get the case resolved immediately after filing. So sometimes that's important. Number two, once you do file, it gets the process rolling. It gets you in front of a judge, and it gives you an opportunity to look forward ahead and to hopefully set a trial setting and then set some deadlines backwards that you can work towards when you know that there's a definitive time to finish that case at some point. Along the process, though, there are a lot of steps, and I won't spend too much time on these, but let me just walk you through a couple. Once you file the lawsuit, we hit this stage called service, and you serve the complaint on the defendants. They're going to deny everything that you said they did wrong, and that's okay. That's just part of the process. But once the answer is completed, and once the defendant denies they did anything wrong, you start what's called discovery. Discovery comes in a lot of colors and shapes and sizes. It could be exchanging documents. It could be answering questions. It could be your lawyer emailing you for information and documents that you have that he's got to produce to the other side. Or it could be depositions, which are under oath statements where there's not a judge there, but you raise your right hand because there's a court reporter there taking your testimony down, and you're giving a statement. And you do all of those things to get ultimately ready for a trial. There are some things that happen at the end of discovery, before trial, we won't spend a lot of time on today. But let me just tell you this. Sometimes filing your case is required in a specific circumstance. It is an invasive process because they get to ask a lot of questions of you based on your history and your background, criminal history, who you live with, how long you've lived in certain areas, whether you were ever filing lawsuits in the past, those types of things. It's invasive. But sometimes the only way to be successful, Carter, is to file a lawsuit. And sometimes you've just got to tell your client, hey, look, you got to trust me. At some point in this system, I say a lot, you have to pick a side. You got to trust someone. And I recommend you trust me. If I'm telling you need to file the case, then trust me, you need to file this case. And a lot of times what happens is after filing, you can double and triple someone's money.
Yeah, and what's important for our clients and for anybody who's listening today to understand is that when we file the lawsuit, we can't just sit back and hope that the case settles at some point. Now, the vast majority of cases will settle, but they will settle at different stages of the litigation. And as a lawyer for the client, we have to engage in discovery, depositions, expert work. We have to do the things that we need to do to prepare the case for trial, because if it does not settle, we have to be ready to try the case. You don't want a lawyer that just shows up after the case has been pending for a year or two, hadn't done anything. Well, I didn't do anything. I thought the case was going to settle. It might not settle.
And it takes time.
Yeah.
And we all have other cases too, and so we're trying to give attention to other folks. But the system's also not fast. The system is slow and it's a bit clunky, but the system is not perfect, but it works and it's practical and it resolves claims or forces people to have to try their cases, and sometimes we get all the way to trial. But it's the process, part of the process we use at this law firm to maximize people's recovery, which means we're trying to turn a $25,000 case into a 50, and a 50 into 100, and 100 into $1 million case. And it's the process that we use here that allows us to do that. Part of it sometimes requires filing a case.
Great discussion.
You too.
Thanks for being here today, and thanks everybody out there for watching and listening to the Verdicts In podcast. Be sure to stay tuned for the next episode. Take care.